Welcome to another episode of season 2 of A Conversation with Carl. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe for the latest content. Today, we are honored to welcome an American molecular biologist, nutritionist, and public health advocate, Professor Marion Nestle. She's a professor of nutrition, food studies, and public health emerita at New York University. Professor Nestle's latest book, What to Eat Now: The Indispensable Guide to Good Food, How to Find It, and Why It Matters, helps us make those decisions on what to eat. Welcome, Professor Marion Nestle, to the conversation.
I'm glad to be here.
So, let's get started. Well, I'll ask my first question. What should we be eating?
Food. I think dietary advice is so simple that the journalist Michael Pollan can do it in 7 words. Eat food, not too much, mostly plants. I just took 700 pages to say the same thing in What to Eat Now.
We all love food and we're all trying to go to pick the best food for ourselves or what we think is healthy. When I go to the supermarket, there's so many choices. How do you look and how do you decide what is good for you?
Well, you read labels if you're looking at packaged foods. And if foods don't have labels on them, those are probably good things to be eating. You know, what the new dietary guidelines are calling eat real food. Yeah. The basic principles of nutrition have never changed. Eat a wide variety of foods and not too much. Make sure you've got your veggies in there, and that's really all you have to do. The rest of it is all marketing.
Talking about marketing, tell us how you got started in food.
Well, I grew up eating it like everybody else. And I went to a summer camp that had a garden, and that was revelatory. I was a child during the Second World War. All we had was canned food. It didn't taste very good. And I couldn't believe the taste of vegetables that were freshly picked on a hot summer day. It was just an extraordinary experience for me, and I've never looked back. And when I had the opportunity, I actually went to college hoping to study about food, but there were only 2 options: agriculture and dietetics. Agriculture, I was a city girl. I didn't know anything about agriculture, so that was out. And dietetics, I lasted 1 day. And then I went on and did other things and came back to it very late. When I was on my first teaching job, I was given a nutrition course to teach. It was like falling in love. I've never looked back.
So I think in Slow Cooked, you write about how you were at conference and there's a moment where they're talking about the smoking and how they're marketing smoking to children, and then something clicks in your head. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Slow Cooked is the memoir that I wrote and that came out in 2022. I've told that story a lot. So I had gone to a conference at the National Cancer Institute in Washington, and it was a conference on behavioral causes of cancer. And the 2 behaviors they were looking at were cigarette smoking and diet. I was there for the diet part. And believe me, I knew that cigarettes cause cancer. This is in the early 1990s. It was pretty well established by then. But it was the first time I had ever heard the collection of physicians and scientists who were devoting their careers to anti-smoking advocacy from all over the world. It was the first time I had ever heard them speak. And they gave talks with slide after slide after slide of cigarette marketing all over the world, in the jungles of Africa, high Himalayas. It was just astonishing, the record that they had of the way that cigarette companies were marketing to people in developing countries. And then there was one talk about cigarette marketing to children. And here again, I knew that cigarette companies marketed to children, particularly to young boys, because it was the era of the Joe Camel cartoon figure. But I had never paid any attention to it. And just watching these slide talks with slide after slide after slide of Joe Camel in places where kids were, and I thought, holy smoke, we should be doing this for Coca-Cola. This is what Coca-Cola does. And I had just never paid any attention to it before. So I started paying attention, and that was really the beginning. Started writing articles about food marketing, where the marketing was, marketing in schools, pouring rights contracts, where soda companies made arrangements with schools for partnerships in which the schools got more money. The more soda they sold to kids, the more money they got. And I wrote about the history of dietary guidelines and some other things that had to do with the way in which food companies were trying to sell their products and why they were having so much trouble selling their products. And eventually I put those together in the book that eventually became Food Politics, which came out in 2002 and has come out in subsequent editions in 2007 and 13. And I'm now talking about a 25th anniversary edition.
Yeah, because I notice that with my daughter who's a teen, and I notice with my niece, she will look to go where TikTok or where she'll get information about what to get, where to get the best burrito or where to get the best food. And they're going right to her and they know where to find her. And they
Well,
know.
that's the way information is transmitted these days.
So how do you combat that?
I don't think it's combatable. I write a daily blog 5 days a week at foodpolitics.com. I've been doing it for nearly 20 years. It's got a small number of followers and a small but passionate group of followers. They sure catch me if I do anything wrong. I don't know. I mean, we try to educate people who are doing this kind of influencing and hope they're not going to lie and hope they're not going to take money from food companies for flacking products. But I think you have to teach people how to understand when they're being marketed to.
And how do you teach people that?
Well, you teach them critical thinking around food. You teach them how to read food labels. You show videos of various people who are selling things and see if they can tell which ones are reliable and which ones aren't. I mean, there are some red flags. If somebody tells you everything you've always known about nutrition is wrong, that's a red flag. That because it's
Yeah.
not how science works. If it sounds too good to be true, that's probably is too good to be true. If it doesn't make it, use common sense. But mostly, if it contradicts the kinds of things that, you've been taught and that make sense, then you should be a little skeptical
W-
and ask who stands to gain from my buying this particular product. Obviously, the product itself, but who else? Who's behind it? I don't know. I mean, you don't want people to be so cynical that they won't eat anything or won't believe anything. And I worry about that because I think that's one consequence of what's happened is you don't know who to believe.
Yes, you're in a
And the
bubble.
answer to the question, who should you believe about nutrition? Well, the answer to that is simple. Me, of course.
Of course it's you. So, of course, we should. That's why we're talking to you. What to Eat was originally published in 2006. Why write an updated version now?
Oh, it was a pandemic project. I needed a project while I was holed up upstate in the frozen north, and couldn't go anywhere or do anything. Couldn't do the kind of research that I was usually doing because everything was closed. So I had this bright idea that this book, which I thought read pretty well, but gee, it looked like it could use a little updating. And I figured I could knock it off in 6 months. And so here we are 4 years later. I have never underestimated the work involved in a project as badly as I underestimated the work involved in this one. It's basically I basically did the whole book over from
what
start to finish, reorganized new chapters, new examples. I mean, it was so much work.
what's changed from 2006 to 2026?
Well, there's a great big long list of things.
Yeah,
I think one of the most pronounced is online ordering.
yeah.
That really barely existed 20 years ago. And now it accounts for 20 to 30% of grocery sales across the country. Ultra processed foods are new. Plant based foods are new. 20 years ago, there was soy milk. That was it. Now you can
Mm.
buy 10 different kinds of nut milks or oat milks or grain milks or whatever. That's new. The international foods are new. The replacement of full sugar sodas by bottled waters of one kind or another. The enormous increase in varieties of bottled water. Flat water, sparkling water, water with alcohol, water with cannabis. I mean,
Yeah.
anything that you want. Fruit flavors, 20 fruit flavors. The proliferation of line extensions. 20 years ago, there was one box of Cheerios. Now there are 20 different kinds. That kind of thing. What's that about? Why are stores organized the way they are? Who pays for it? What's going on in a grocery store? Some of that is the same. Some of it is really changed a lot.
Yeah.
Self checkout.
Self-checkout's great sometimes.
Sometimes.
Sometimes, except when you're not putting the item on the we're putting it where it weighs it to make sure that it's supposed to
I
be
don't
there.
like machines yelling at me.
Yes, nobody does. You make a point about the overwhelming choice from water to cereals. How do we know that we're making the right choice?
No, I'll say it again. The basic principles of nutrition are very simple. Balance, variety, moderation. Eat food not too much, mostly plants. If you're doing that, you don't have to worry about it. I think it's really the ultra processed food concept is a very important new concept since the first edition of this book. And it refers to the heavily processed foods that take up most of the center aisles of supermarkets. And there's now an extraordinary amount of research that says that diets based on these foods contribute to poor health, if for no other reason than they make you eat more calories than you think you're eating, that you want to eat, and that you need. And for that alone, that's a reason to resist them because they were formulated to be absolutely irresistible, if not addictive. And if you're trying to manage your weight, you don't want to eat too much ultra processed food. That's a new concept. I think a very helpful one.
What do you make of the GLP-1 drugs? Because that is a big deal, and it's
Oh, it's a huge deal. Yeah, I'm particularly interested in their effect on the food industry. The food industry is in trouble right now for four reasons. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is one of those reasons. The GLP drugs are another. The whole concept of ultra processed foods is a third. And the fourth is what's happened to prices at the supermarket. I don't know what it's like in your area, but I'm just shocked at what groceries cost. All right, I live in
yeah.
Manhattan where prices are ridiculously inflated, but still. So those four things in combination are putting enormous pressure on consumers not to buy as much, not to eat out as much, not to buy as much processed food, to try to cook more if they can. And if there's one mantra that I will say over and over again, it's eating less is bad for business. Maybe
Yeah.
good for your health, but it's really bad for business. And so the food companies are really scrambling to try to figure out what to do about the GLP-1 drugs because they induce people not to want to eat as much.
Well, you're seeing that from, like, stories are starting to pop up
Oh, and the
uh,
research shows it.
about restaurants now, people are eating less. Yeah,
Yeah.
portions are
I mean,
less.
because the drugs slow down digestion and slow down absorption, you get full faster. And what's so interesting about them is that they have a selective effect. So it's not that you want to eat less across the board, but you particularly want to eat less of junk food. And that's really interesting. From a scientific standpoint, that's fascinating. So that has gotten the food industry to scramble to produce products that people will buy that are higher in protein, lower in sugar, higher in fiber, and give people who are on these drugs what they want or need.
Isn't that better or not better?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's there seems no question that people who are on these drugs improve their indices of health very, very quickly. They lose weight. They resolve their symptoms of type 2 diabetes, their cholesterol levels go down, their blood pressure goes down, their cognitive thinking goes up. I mean, these drugs seem to have astounding benefits, and if people can tolerate the side effects and have enough money to buy the drugs, their health indices seem to be improving. Half of the people who are on the drugs go off them in the first year, and that's mainly because of the cost or the side effects. The side effects can be hairy. Some people tolerate them better than others. Mm.
Where do you think we head with this GLP-1? Does it land up sticking around
Oh,
or
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, once the pills become common and people can drop the injections, and when they are able to formulate the pills so they don't cause as many side effects, then that will make it easier for a lot more people to take them, and if the cost goes down. That's the big issue. I think it will eventually.
So then what happens to the food industry? Because you say
Well,
it's a
they're not
big
gonna sell
change.
as much. They'll try to compete, but, it'll put some companies out of business.
Yes. Touched on this at the beginning, the marketing of food to children, and it's a big issue. How should we be looking at that? Or how should like parents be trying to teach their kids how to eat healthy when there is a big push from these companies?
Well, I would say the first thing you do is to teach your kids to recognize when they're being marketed to. That would be number one. That's part of food literacy. It's enormously important to do. So you get kids to resist the marketing because the companies are very good at it. And most parents can't see marketing to kids because you know what? It's not on television anymore. It's off television and it's on social media, and I just heard about a study yesterday in which they think that older children, are exposed to 10,000 advertisements for food a year on social media.
Wow. That's a
That's
lot.
10,000 is a lot.
Yes.
The more
That's a
that
lot.
kids are on social media, the more they're exposed to ads for foods. Some of them clearly ads, and some of them hidden. Some of them coming from influencers who are paid by the companies but aren't disclosing it. Or even if they are disclosing it, they're disclosing it in such small print that nobody can see it. So kids are being marketed to constantly, and this is an enormous source of revenue for the companies because even if kids don't have money themselves, they have clout in the family. It even has a name. It's called the pester factor. And, they nag their parents to buy the foods. And I've heard food company executives say, know that marketing to children is wrong. We know we shouldn't be doing it. We really wish we could stop, but
But
our
we
stockholders won't let us.
yes, we can stop.
We can't stop.
We can
We'll
stop.
go out of business. We can't stop. So kids are being exploited. And every attempt to try to put restrictions on marketing to kids, and I can recite decades of attempts, starting in 1979 when the Federal Trade Commission wanted to put some mild restrictions on marketing to kids on television. The head of the Federal Trade Commission lost his job over that. Congress passed a law and said, you can't do anything to restrict marketing to kids on television.
Those
And then
lobbyists must have made a lot of money.
apparently so.
Yes.
And then in the early 90s, there was a report on marketing to children from the Institute of Medicine. And it said marketing to children is a really terrible thing. It makes kids eat junk food because the marketing is for the junk food or the ultra processed food, as we now call it. And it should stop. And if it doesn't stop, Congress should pass a law. Well, good luck with that. And then Michelle Obama tried to do the same thing. That got absolutely nowhere. There was a interagency where 4 federal agencies tried to set nutrition standards for marketing to kids. Congress intervened in that one too and said, you can't do that. And
And they've
so
just changed the food pyramid. Now it's upside down now. Like whole grains are on the bottom.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the new food pyramid promotes meat and full fat dairy. That's really what it's about. And that, there's now plenty of evidence that The meat lobby had a great deal to do with that, and the dairy lobby. We don't have, government agencies that are really protecting kids. Kids are very underprotected in our society and under-resourced, and I think that's too bad.
We've been talking about ultra processed foods, and those ultra processed foods, I would say potato chips would probably be in that mix. They're readily available to us and much cheaper.
Mm.
That also is a problem.
Mhm. Yeah, they're among the least expensive, most convenient, and most delicious foods in the supermarket. And remember, the main drivers of food choice are cost, convenience, and taste, not necessarily in that order, but those are the main drivers. And ultra processed foods win on all three counts. And the idea that they don't cost very much, they're on the shelf all the time. You can buy it, you're not going to throw it out because it's not going to spoil. They tend to be in dry boxes. That makes them, and they're enormously profitable for the companies that make them. They're among the best-selling items in supermarkets. Everybody who goes to a supermarket buys them. The new dietary guidelines say you should not buy so much of those foods, but nobody pays any attention to dietary guidelines, so we'll see what happens.
Aside from reading your books, what else should we be doing as a society to get the word out about what to eat and to eat
Well, I think
healthy?
we should be passing regulations that change the food environment into one that promotes healthier eating. We should be subsidizing fruits and vegetables. We should be having healthy food in schools and giving schools lots more money to produce healthy foods for the kids in school. I could think of lots of things that the government could do that would make it easier for people to buy healthier food. Give people more money, for one thing.
How do we do that?
The political system. You try to get your friends to agree with you, you join organizations, you do basic advocacy, food movement advocacy. The Maha Moms movement is doing a really great job on getting color additives out of the food supply. I wish they would push harder on the chemicals, and I wish they would push harder on some other things too, but they've done a good job on that using the political system.
As we start to wrap up here, what do you think as a parent I should be doing to help my child get healthy or to stay healthy?
Well, have healthy food at home. Model it. If you eat healthfully, that's what your kid is going to see. If you don't have junk food in the house, your kid's not going to be able to eat it as easily. They'll get it in school and they'll get it from their friends, but they won't get it from you. And you wanna model healthy eating. I think healthy eating is yummy. I don't have any trouble with it. I would never advise people to eat in any way that I don't eat. If I can do it, other people can do it. But I happen to like vegetables. It makes it much easier.
Yeah, and that is, that's when you're listening to people talk about the GLP-1 drugs, you'll hear a lot of them say that there's the food noise and we
Mm,
have food noise in our head. We're always thinking about food. We're always thinking about the potato chips. We're
mm,
also always
right.
thinking about the cake.
You're
And
not
that
thinking about carrots.
you're not thinking about carrots. That's correct. So I don't know how, and I think that's the balance, and I think that's the struggle.
Well, the GLP-1 drugs stop that. At least that's what people tell me. I mean, I've talked to dozens and dozens and dozens of people who are on these drugs. They all say pretty much the same thing. And what they say is very consistent with what the research is showing on the use of GLP-1 drugs, which is they make people want to eat more healthfully. That's amazing.
Well, I think that's part of the tool, right? It's not you
Yeah.
take it and you're going to lose weight. I think it's that you take it and then you use it as a tool to keep working out. You use it as a
Mm.
tool to eat healthy, to find the foods. And I think from listening to other people who are on it, I keep hearing people say, if I eat something that's not healthy,
I
I have a
feel it.
side.
I
Yes, you feel
feel
it.
it. Right.
Yes, you feel it.
Yeah, so that there's feedback on it. I mean, these drugs are amazing, and I'm completely fascinated by them. And I know lots of people who are taking them. I really do, and more power to them. I know people who have lost astonishing amounts of weight for the first time in their lives. It's the first time they've ever been able to lose weight. And they feel better. They feel better, and their biochemical markers show why, because they're much healthier than they were. So it's hard to argue with that. I wish that they were more available to people who don't have money, and they will be eventually, I guess.
As we wrap up here, is there anything else that I have not asked you that I should ask you that you wanted to
No, yeah, I
advise?
mean, food is one of life's greatest pleasures, and you should eat what you like and enjoy it,
Yes, that is correct.
just not too much.
Well, that's the problem.
It
That's the
is.
problem. Marion Nestle, thank you so much for joining me today. The book is What to Eat Now, the indispensable guide to good food, how to find it, and why it matters.
And here's what it looks like. I just happen to have one right here.
That's great. Thank you. You can buy it where you get your books. She also has a blog you can read. You want to tell people
Foodpolitics.
foodpolitics.com is the blog. And for all of you out there for joining me, thank you so much. Until next time, be safe.